What's up, rockers?
Hey, I'm Kaz.
And I'm Shay, and welcome to another episode of For the Record with Kaz and Shay. Kaz, we do a lot of shows. We've had a lot of national recording artists, big artists. We got to show some love to Olympia. Who are our guests today?
These guys are the foundation of Olympia music, in my opinion. Stage right, starting off with Jerry Zeigler, Brian Sparhawk, Jon Merithew. Respectively, I mean, so many great bands, The Noses, C Average, Death Squad. I mean, it Fits of Depression. I can go on and on. And, before we were filming here, off camera, some of these stories were just mind-blowing.
I know. We should start a Patreon where people can pay to get those behind-the-scenes naughty stories. You tell a lot of naughty stories. They're all naughty.
And what's kind of cool is it's like people don't realize the rich history of the impact these guys have had on Olympia music. I mean, way before even like Bikini Kill started, you guys were out there doing it with Death Squad and some of those older bands and stuff. And we'll be the first to admit, John and I will be the first to admit, we aren't the most knowledgeable on the Olympia music scene. You know, Brian and I were talking, like I saw him back in the Battle of the Bands with Diamond Lie, which was Jerry Cantrell's band, and, seeing like up at Natasha's up in Bremerton, stuff like that. And
roadie or security or something for that Diamond Lie thing?
No, Fallout played it.
Oh, you guys were
at the St. Martin's. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Right.
We lost.
Yeah,
they won. And they won. They became a band.
Too, by the way, that whole thing was rigged for them.
Right. Nice. Well, and it was funny. You remember the other band was Slaughterhouse 5, and that became the Rhino Helpers.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was like crazy.
So
how it seems to me, I remember like when we were in Death Squad, you and somebody went and worked for the Alice in Chains show at the St. Martin's.
Yeah, no, that was out at Evergreen.
No, another one. I thought maybe. I know I worked at that one at Evergreen too.
Yeah. I don't remember the other one, but maybe
it was a terrible.
I was drunk for many years and don't remember a few things.
Why were you a bad security guard?
Just drinking.
You can't come in. You can come in.
No, I didn't care. I'd just take the kids.
Come on in.
So Kaz here is an adopted son of Olympia. He grew up in Cleveland. So
Nice.
I've been in Olympia my entire life. Have you guys been Olympians for all your life?
Well, I was born in Aberdeen, actually.
Okay.
Weirdly enough, 1968, we moved from Aberdeen back to Tacoma in 69. And then in 76, the whole family moved from Tacoma to Olympia. So I've been here since 76.
How about you, Brian?
I was born down in Los Angeles, but I moved up here to Washington, down to Chehalis when I was like 3, I think. And then to Shelton when I was like 11, and then like when I was like 13, I moved to Olympia. Been here since I was 13.
Jerry?
I went to kindergarten right over here at Lincoln.
Oh, sweet. Do you have any report cards? Were you a good student?
No. I don't remember.
A pleasure to have in class.
I don't have to see any
It's a long
report
time
cards.
ago.
Not a good student.
And so what is your first...
Kindergarten, no, isn't good. It was like later on.
And then it's just all downhill from there. You peaked in kindergarten?
Yeah.
And then when did you guys start picking up instruments? How old were you guys when you guys respectively started playing?
I was like 11. Like my dad died when I was 11, and I went to stay with this kid, Bo Green, when I was living down in Chehalis, and he had like Kiss Alive 2. And he also had an old acoustic guitar. And so, like, Kiss Alive 2, I just remember opening that up, at 11 and being like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, can I swear on this?
Yes,
what
swearing
is this?
is encouraged.
And then just also picking that guitar up and, like, beating on it, And so that was kind of it. Got an acoustic guitar. And the story I always tell is, like, I drove my mom crazy with that acoustic guitar for a good 5-6 years, being horrible at it. Yeah. But just kept doing it.
How about Jerry? When did you hit the kit?
Well, I always had guitars, when growing up, acoustics, electric, whatever. And but a friend of mine, when I was probably right into 9th grade, he got kicked out of his house. He was kind of a bad kid, sort of, whatever. And he had a brand new Tama Imperial Star, or no, Rock Star, that had 8 mounted toms and a floor tom and big old 26 kick, and he didn't have nowhere to set it up. And I was like, you set it up at my house. And he did, and I just started playing it all the time. And
It slowly became your drum set.
No, he wound up taking it back late, but it had been a couple of years that it was at my house. And I had like friends at school, Angelo and Ted Hobbitsetzer, those guys would come over and play my drums. They found out I had this huge drum set and would come over and play like Rush songs and stuff, and I'd watch and learn stuff from them. And then, so now I'm all like enamored with music. I'm like, that's what I'm going to be. Oh yeah, actually, I had to go to off campus for a while, right? And
I remember that.
Eric Pugh, his older brother Chris, is where I met him and Nathan, and they had their punk rock band, and they had a little party on Halloween one year. I was young, you know, I was like high school, and went to their house for this party, and they were just like, they blew me away. I was like, that's
Is that Pet Products?
cool, man. And
Was that their band?
yeah, I'd say the first band that they had. We were in high school
Well,
together.
the Guillotine was the Eric and Nathan's band, and
This
Tom
was with
Robichon.
Chris.
Was Chris?
Yeah,
Chris
it
and
was
Eric?
like the Pet Products, or
Yeah,
Young
yeah.
Pioneers.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember.
You
So
guys
long
both
ago.
have like that talent where you're great guitarist and bass player. John, especially, you know, Marky Felch, John, you're his favorite bass player. I was like,
Yeah, I heard
he's
that
an amazing
one.
guitar.
I might be the only one he's ever heard.
He played with Jeff Math, Grammy Award winner. But so
I do
what-
like playing bass.
What did it come up with you, like for your beginnings?
My parents bought a acoustic guitar for my sister, my older sister, and she was learning like John Denver songs and stuff like that. And I would sneak into her room and just play that thing until it basically just sort of became my guitar. And then I went over to a friend's house. I think this was probably about fourth grade. I rode the bus with him. But we didn't have any classes together, but we sat together on the bus and became really good friends, Kelly Van Camp. And I went over to his house, and he had this, do you remember those old Sears drum sets? They're almost like toys.
Yeah.
And he had one of those set up in his room. And I was just kind of like, what? That's weird. Can you play that? And he got on there and made that thing sound like, he sounded like John Bonham on that, to me at least.
Yeah.
When I was in fourth grade, I was like, oh my God. And it was cool because it was a see-through. It was like almost like a mini Vista.
Like a Vista light,
Yeah,
yeah.
Vista light. The only thing that was bad was like, you know, those cymbals, just trash. Yeah, just like pie plates. But then he also had a guitar, and he had a band with his brothers called Flammable Gas. Because they had a sticker. He had a sticker on the front because his dad was a fire chief, and he had these flammable gas stickers, and he put it on there, and I don't know. So they were always making records. Matt Van Camp was also the cousin. He was in Flammable Gas.
I'm a big KBC fan.
What's that?
I'm a big KBC fan.
Nice. Me too. Yeah, he rules. And so he got me into it. And he had the guitar, and I was like, "Can I play that?" And he kind of showed me how to play like the blues progression, and that was the start of it for me. Hearing that it was a solid state Memphis guitar with a solid state amp, and it just sounded like, you know, it's just awesome.
Was it
sounding.
Les Paul, Memphis Les Paul?
It was kind of more. It actually kind of looked like a Mosrite.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
My first like real guitar was a Memphis Les Paul
Nice.
copy with like a Gibson hardshell case. I bought it from Adam Casper. Do you know him? He's a producer. He worked with Nirvana with a whole bunch of people. I went to high school with him at Capital, and man, it was like the holy grail because it felt and played just like a Les Paul. Yeah.
So you guys all got your instruments going. So what were some of these first bands you got going once you guys were kind of up and moving with it all?
I would so like, I just want to be in the music scene, whatever. And you know, it was slow and quiet around here. There wasn't a lot going on. So I had like, my
What year
friends
is this?
were looking for a place to practice Cypress, and I told them they could jam at my house. So they started practicing at my house, and then they found a place to practice. And I had been jamming a little bit on the side with Eric Pugh, and we were like, we got to get Brian to quit Fallout and come jam with us. And he came over a couple times, and then pretty soon it just like Fallout.
And what year was
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Do you remember the timing, the year?
It would have been because I was in Fallout in like 84, 85, and I remember in 1986 because I have a flyer of it. This band Grinder, it was Eric Pugh and me and
Schoblem.
no, I don't think who was playing
what's his
drums? Chris
face?
McCrummel was playing drums from Fallout, and I want No, that was no. I think John Hinkle was singing, but I'm not sure. We only played a couple shows, and we opened for the Melvins at Gesco in 1986.
Yeah, that was probably early '86.
Yeah,
Death Squad was together.
Yeah, because that band lasted just for a very short period of time, and then I started playing with Death Squad.
What was the Melvins like in '86? Were they faster?
They were. I'll tell you my experience with that. I actually had a board tape of it. I think I still have the tape of that show.
No way.
I was like, all I knew was like Kiss and like Maiden, and I was just starting to get these guys. Jerry and Eric were starting to introduce me into like stuff like Slayer and Metallica. I didn't even know who any of that was. But then the Melvins came out and played, and it was just noise, and it was like noise, and then I think the song ended, but I'm not sure if a song ended, and then it just kept going and kept going, and then after about 15 minutes of that, they literally broke into I Think I'm Going Blind by Kiss, and I lost my fucking mind because I'm a huge Kiss fan, and I was all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, these guys are really good. It went from like I have no idea what I'm watching to, oh my God, these guys are amazing. Yeah,
Right.
I think that was, I want to say that was like their second or third show in Olympia.
That's what Grace Harbor County will do to you, man.
Of theirs.
Yeah, of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know they had played a couple of other shows.
Yeah.
Because I told
Before
somebody
we
I
did
thought that was
because
their
we did
first.
a big one. Well, it wasn't that. It was whatever. It was Malfunction, the Melvins, Death
Yeah.
Squad.
I was telling you about that.
64
Spiders, yeah.
Andrew Wood back then. And
Yeah. And Tom and Andrew got into some sort of beef. Remember that?
Tom Kaiser.
Yeah. There was something about the door. There was some beef about the door.
Andrew Wood story. See, we're learning
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Olympia has some cool stories to it.
But that, again, I mean, Andrew
That doesn't
Wood's
surprise me.
so before his time because I'm like watching. I'm like, what? He's in fucking pink spandex and he
Oh,
had that
yeah, some big
Steinberger
boa.
bass and a big boa.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm watching. That was the same experience. You don't know. You're like, wow. Yeah.
And then John, so you and Kelly started like with the Noses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, before that, it was when we were still in like fourth grade, fifth grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. We had we were in a make-believe band where we didn't actually play the instruments. We were in a band we made up called the Four Hands, and it was like early '60s, all the way. And when I think they broke up right before the '70s. The model was, of course, the Beatles,
Right.
or the Stones, the Who,
Sure.
Kinks, Yardbirds. Those were our like bands, and because Kelly had he was the youngest of like 7 brothers, and they all had amazing record collections, and had all that British Invasion stuff, and some old Fleetwood Mac like this,
Yeah,
this
the
Peter
Peter
Green
Green.
stuff behind
Oh,
us,
yeah.
and just ripping blues stuff,
Yeah.
and rock. The prototype for like heavy metal, actually, where it sort of evolves, and Yardbirds become New Yardbirds become Led Zeppelin, and then you've got metal.
Right.
So we were sort of still in the '60s. We had this this club, and we also had a fake band. We all had like I was the lead singer, and I also played guitar, harmonica, and keyboards. Tim Brown, who ended up in the Noses, he was the bass player in Noses. He's currently in a band with Jimmy Davies. Low Wires. So he was the drummer, and we had a slight my name was John Mitchell. It was it was like other kids were playing D&D and we were playing British Invasion band somehow. We just made up this sort of weird thing, and we'd go to recess and we had these fake cigarettes that we'd smoke, and the people we were by the swing sets just like smoking fags, and being like the monitor would come over, like the recess monitor, and be like, "Hello, governor," or all this kind of thing. We were trying to be British. We were talking British accents, and we were just obsessed. And the parents would drive by and be like, "There are kids smoking on the," It was funny. We got in trouble, but we were just like, yeah, we were obsessed with that stuff. So yeah, that's what we started. But then we ended up doing the Noses later.
Yeah.
After that was probably '85, I think, when we started really
Taking it
learning
seriously,
our
yeah.
like
I
instruments
remember.
and stuff.
I remember the Noses back then. I do. I don't remember. I don't remember that we were never like part. That scene never really. Back then, man, I'm telling you, back then, like you guys all know, you guys do.
Draw a line.
Like there was a line. There was metal and there was punk.
Yeah.
right? There was metal and there's
We
punk,
weren't
and
either of
then
those
you were
things
neither.
either, so
and so you were
It's like, who's bad?
even worse off than the metal or punk bands. And I remember when it kind of started to cross over when like the whole DRI stuff.
Yeah.
They were one of those people don't realize they were one of those bands that really were a big part of that crossover
And
scene.
Accused, too.
And who?
Accused.
And Accused too. I mean, before that, metal and punk is like you guys didn't mix. And I remember like the Tropicana Club, like downtown. It's like metal, and they, Slayer played there, but that was like just because they were a touring band. But like metal bands weren't invited to be part of that scene at all. It was punk and it was metal. Yeah.
And that was it, too.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was nothing
Glam
else.
stuff in Olympia.
Hey, we were a glam band.
Not for long.
I know, true. Not, as soon as I discovered,
Who was?
I was in Fallout. We actually played at the Tropicana. Like I have pictures of it, and there was hardly anybody there. Just our friends, 20 people there. But we actually played at the Tropicana, the punk club, as a glam band, which was a really weird thing to do.
rad, though.
But then once I started playing with Death Squad, the glam thing was completely gone. All of a sudden, it was like, wait a minute, this speed metal
remember
thing
you
is
and
like fucking way
I
different.
remember you and Eric just working on riffs constantly,
every day.
Like for hours every day. They'd go to work.
We would
go to
woodshed.
work,
Yeah.
And then they'd get together, drink beer. And
We would get drunk and
write
woodshed.
songs and
write
stuff.
songs and
Yeah.
just play constantly.
And again, this point in Olympia, like it was kind of just a metal thing that was going on. We had talked about earlier some of the bands that like I would see in high school and stuff. But it was pretty much you guys.
Yeah, there's like 88.
Yeah.
No, this was like 86.
Okay.
Yeah, this is 86, 87, yeah.
I was still in high school.
Yeah.
I graduated in '87, and
Yeah.
we were not even close to being anywhere near even
Yeah.
halfway professional, and you guys were already sort of like doing it.
What were some of those shows that you got? I mean, like you'd mentioned earlier, the Melvins, but
We
like
played a good example of that would be like when we opened for the Accused and Subvert and Natasha's. And Subvert, if you remember them, they were a punk. They were from Tacoma, right? Eric Greenwald, remember him? Yep. And they were like a punk band, right? And we were a metal band, and the Accused were both. And so the Accused, we played at Natasha's and the headline, and Subvert, and then Death Squad. And so it was like almost that kind of brought those two scenes together a little bit more. But that was a crazy
And Death Squad
show.
wasn't like wasn't like Iron Maiden metal or Judas Priest metal.
like
We
thrash,
were more
wasn't it?
extreme, and
We were
Tom
thrash.
took it even to the next step. So people didn't know what to think of us, kind of. I mean, a little bit. They loved us or they didn't.
Yeah, I love it. And all of our shows, pretty much all of our shows ended in riots.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but not really, because they really did. I mean, I remember some of them, like the one out at the fairgrounds where I remember Jerry and his girlfriend were fighting, and I'm not going to get in trouble, but I think they were fist fighting. And then the cops are coming. The cops are there, and Tom is on stage saying, "Fuck the police. Start a fucking riot." Remember that?
Yeah, they turned the lights off.
They turned the lights off, and he's screaming at the cops and trying to start a riot, and it does. And back in those days, Eric Pugh and I would be like, we'd grab our guitars and be like, hey, so we're going to practice on Tuesday, right? And we'd be walking out the door, and there'd be like absolute chaos behind us, and we just, all right, have fun. Have fun, Jerry and Tom.
The one night down at Breeze's Club downtown when there was like some runaways came
the
through.
North Shore
Yeah, the North.
Yeah, way before.
or Surf Club?
Before
The Surf Club. It was before Thekla.
Yeah.
Was that the night of
those
the?
early
Was that the
venue
night
spots.
that the Gulf War
threw
started? The first Gulf War. We played the night of the first Gulf War. Remember?
Oh shit, I don't know.
We did. The first Gulf War, when it started, we played, and there was a riot that night in Olympia. Not because of us, but because of the war.
Yeah.
Right.
But we were playing
Was
that
it
night.
90?
I was up in
I don't
Tacoma
know
Dome
what
watching
day.
AC/DC that night. Everyone kind of knows where they were.
Yeah, right?
I was like, I was going to see AC/DC.
Yeah, we were playing at the North Shore.
August 2nd, 1990.
August 2nd, 1990. Yeah.
I was working at the
downtown.
mall at Warehouse Records.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What a good job.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It's
You
where
know-
I met my first wife.
Yeah, and it's, so that's going on in Olympia. You guys are playing. There's a lot of other things going on in Olympia, too, at this time. There's K Records. There's like a bunch of other influence. You had the Bikini Kill. I don't know what time that, but the Riot Girl movement was big. And like I say, you guys have been through all of that, and so what was that like during all those periods of stuff? Because I mean, like I said, you look at some of these venues inside the Capitol Theater, like the shows that went through there, like Fugazi, and Dean Hobbs tells me about seeing the White Stripes back before they were anything, and here at this point, you got C Average going, right?
Well, I think See Average started like 97.
So that's way later.
Yeah, that. Like everything was sort of cooled down. Like you guys were doing. This was probably what we were just talking about in like 86 and then 87, and like there was no real grunge going on yet. No. But all those bands were kind of playing and
Melvins
trying.
were, but
Melvins, but see, they're such a weird band
They're
because
not really grunge,
they're kind of metal, but they're kind of punk.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to ask you, like, because I never really saw the Melvins back in the day. I never
I'd
went.
say that whole movement started around 89, 88.
Yeah, 88.
Around in there. I had a radio show at Chaos. And,
Cheese Death.
It was on Monday nights, and like Nirvana would play in the dorms. They would play parties on like Friday and Saturday night with everybody. Just get a bunch of beer, or keg, or whatever. And it was. I mean, it was just a normal thing back then.
Right.
You didn't know Nirvana was going to be as big as they got.
Or the whole scene.
band.
It wasn't
Right.
I think when you started to think that maybe there was something going on for me was like that first underground pop festival that Calvin did at the theater, where I first saw L7 open for Fugazi at the Capitol Theater. And there was a bunch of people, and then it was the first time that you really knew there was like a bunch of people from outside of Olympia coming to it. Right? It was like, and then people were like, I'd hear people talking from out of town about how Olympia is a scene and how there's like all these different bands. And that was about the time when Bikini Kill started happening, and Fitz went from being like a shitty little punk band that used to open for Death Squad all the time to like all of a sudden headlining and playing all these different shows. Right before I joined
Green Day
Fitz.
and Offspring opening for them.
Right. Yeah. Tim Armstrong from Rancid used to have ties with like Operation IV playing down here or whatnot. It was just kind of, there's a lot. I mean, we'll go into more about that later, how a lot of people have come to you guys with stuff, and you'll tell the stories later. But like I said, there was something going on in Olympia, and then you had your Yo-Yo A Go-Go festival.
Yeah, that was the next one.
And I mean, it was pretty cool.
The Yo-Yo A Go-Go Festival, if people don't know who was actually on that, was like, it was actually, that was at that point for Fitz, which I had been with Fitz, I think, at that point for not very long, like a little while. It was the biggest show we'd ever played, and it did more for us as a band than almost any other show we ever played. Our agent was there, who we ended up getting an agent out of New York who happened to be at Yo-Yo because she worked with Seaweed, but like Beck played there. And like Rancid played there, and like Chris and Dave, their first performance after the end of Nirvana was with the Stinky Puffs. Right. They played there. I mean, and just the list of bands like Carp and like Heaven to Betsy and Mecca Normal and like all the, a bunch I'm not thinking of too, like Sun Velvet Sidewalk, Lois.
Did Fugazi play at a Yo-Yo?
No, they played the Underground Pop Festival.
And that was they only had one of those.
But I do have a story about that. After Fitz's show that we played there, I was walking up to the green room, and I'm a huge Fugazi fan, huge. And Ian MacKay was walking down the stairs, and he was like, "Good show," and I'm just all like fucking wetting myself, It's like, oh my god.
I mean,
Ian MacKay just told me good show.
If there's like a punk icon, like the guy that stood by his message throughout his whole career, that was him.
That was him. Yep.
No shows are going to be more than this price.
Yeah.
Till the end. That's what he did with Fugazi.
Yeah, and there's so many people from that era that from Olympia that you don't even a lot of people don't realize. Like, like I have a picture from backstage of Yo-Yo A Go-Go of me talking to Kimya Dawson. Back then, and then somebody saw that picture and was to me like, actually, I think it was my daughter actually who said, Kimya Dawson, and I'm like, yeah, I do, and I remember. I didn't even know about that Juno thing. I didn't even know she played music, honestly, because we used to hang out. I used to live across from the library at 7th and Adams, and she lived like over, and we would just go smoke cigarettes and hang out.
Yeah,
that's how I knew her. And then I saw her at the co-op, and my daughter was freaking out for some reason. And this is like many years later, and I'm talking to her, and later she's like, "I can't believe you know her," and I'm like, "Who?" Put it together. So there's people like that, like all over, right? that
Right.
kind of come through here or are from here, right? A ton of people.
That's what we were talking about, the street where my house is. It's like, wow, I don't know why I'm living here, because there were some talents that lived on O'Farrell Avenue.
Yeah.
You know, like Carrie Brownstein lived here.
Yeah.
Not in my house, but somewhere on the street. And then 2 houses down from me, the singer for Seaweed owns that house.
Yeah, Stoffer and his wife, Yana, own that
Yeah.
house. Yeah.
And Shoshana Bean, jazz singer in New York, lived on the street.
This is like a high rent. This is like
I
Beverly
don't know
Hills
what
of
I'm doing
Olympia
here.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You guys are enhancing the talent by being in my house right now. So,
So what's Olympia like compared to Seattle and Portland? I mean, like it's like you're like right in the middle. What is that like? That's a weird question. I don't even know why I said it. But
They're really different cities.
yeah,
It's a
far
good
as
place to
music
be,
goes.
actually, because
Yeah,
you can
I mean-
you can access both those cities, which are bigger, but not have to pay the price of living in those cities.
Portland's
Or just-
maybe a little more receptive to
Yeah.
everything.
Back then, yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, like this is Terry
Where
Con,
Seattle can
yeah.
be kind of a tough town to
yeah.
break.
I definitely would agree with that statement. I remember when we played a bunch of shows in Seattle, Death Squad, we played the Vogue, and it just definitely, there was a snobbery about it, for sure. Right?
Yeah.
There really was.
Snobby
Yeah, yeah.
Seattle. Don't do it.
We played
Yeah,
a song. We played a show with Fitz. This was One Ton, and we played a show with Fitz. It was probably 90. Well, when was One Ton? Was 93 or 94? And it was it at the? It was just a really stinky punk club, and
In Seattle?
yeah, what was that one? It was the Union, not the Union Bay.
Oh, Lake Union Pub.
Oh yeah, that was it.
The Lake Union Pub where the floor
Yes.
is crusty and crispy, and then once you start playing, it gets soft and
gets
moist.
soft.
Yeah, oh, so bad. So bad, yeah, yeah.
We were playing. It was one of our first shows, really only shows of me, because I ended up leaving One Ton to kind of focus more on the noses, which maybe was a mistake. I'm not sure, but that's what I did. And but we played this one show, and man, we were like, you guys were there, and you guys were like our blueprint. Like we wanted to be Fitz, but with a weirdly giant lead singer.
Yeah, Brian Alexander. Yeah.
That looked like Superman or Hercules or something.
Who's a
Crazy.
firefighter now,
Yeah.
who looked like a firefighter back then.
Oh my God. And we were just like, and I could tell Brad was just like super, like we were just trying to go as hard as we could. And
Yeah.
I remember Mikey being up on this table and he's changing his strings, and he's going to play in like 15 minutes, and he's changing his strings, and but it was one of those moments where, like you were saying with Ian, where I could see him, he was watching me, and he was like, oh, cool, it's like,
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I mean, it's definitely been like a rich history in Olympia with, like I said, you guys have been through it and you've seen it all, And then, like, there's things that you, Brian, we've talked about, like, you discovered you didn't realize, like, oh, I played in a band with Fred Armisen. And,
Yeah.
it's, and you guys have a lot of connections. You roadied for, like, L7, and, you guys have so much deep history with all these bands. It's cool. And, John, your story's kind of neat, being on tour with Hovercraft. You want to tell a little bit about that? What's the average?
I think we just done our first record, we'd finished it, but it hadn't come out yet, and we were just like, well, we got to go on tour. So I went because I didn't really have the money to set a tour, because in those days you had to kind of have money already so you could pay your bill and leave the messages, and then they would call you back, and you'd leave a message with them, and you'd have to call New York again and be like, could we, phone bill. Oh man. And then sending them all that physical, like, demos and all that kind of stuff that they wanted, and some pictures, and it kind of costs some money. Now you just email for free,
I know,
pretty much,
everything,
and call them.
internet.
Exactly. So I went to K Records, and this guy Kento, he was walking out, and we'd already played around, like we were starting to make a name for ourselves, and he was like, "Hey, you want to? What's the average doing? You want to go on tour with at the time it was ICU, but they changed it to IQU because I think there was another ICU band but EQ is what it was really called. And he's like, "Do you want to go on tour with our band and Hovercraft?" And I was like, "Yeah." That's kind of what I was coming here for. It was really synchronicity. It was bizarre. I was just like, "Oh, that was easy." And then I went in and talked to. Do you remember Chad Criollo? Did he book for you guys?
Oh yeah.
Chad, and he ended up doing some crazy stuff with. I think he booked for WAMU.
He's huge.
Yeah.
He's
He is
running.
like-
I think he's doing Bumper Shoot right now.
Yeah,
Really?
I ran into him not that long ago, like at Bayview.
Yeah.
I see him a lot when
He's got going on.
Yeah.
in Seattle. And I didn't realize I took photos of his house last year. We were talking. He's like, "Oh, you did photos of my house. You were with my friend Rick Wilson, the agent." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." But yeah, he's kind of like top dog at AEG.
Yeah.
Like, he sits with the president of the Mariners at games. It's
Bizarre. It is bizarre. Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's kind of weird.
So it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
I
You know?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is a little bit of a goofball to know him like really well and just be like, "Oh my gosh."
Well,
he's just a goofball.
He
Just
started.
like everybody else.
He roadied for Fitz. He went out with Fitz
Yeah.
on tour for like a month or so, and then at the time I was also booking. I fell into booking too, like with Fitz when Fitz did when the Let's Give It a Twist record was coming out on K, our first record. We had this girl from Seattle as an agent, and Mikey had kind of hooked it all up and told her, "We want to go out for 2.5 months. We want to go everywhere. We want to go on tour. We don't ever really want to come home. We want to, this is what we want to do." And she came back she had a bunch of bands. She was doing CZ bands at the time, label CZ a lot. And so she came back with like 2.5-week tour to Chicago and then down through a bunch of bumfuck nowhere states that a bunch of clubs we didn't even, And we're like, no. And so we got rid of her. And then Calvin was just like, just come up to K, and here's my book. He had this big binder full of all of these like clubs all over the U.S. And it just happened, like you said, the synchronicity stuff. It's like, it happened at the same time. He's like, come on up and use my phones at K. And Mikey was living in the middle of it. He had an apartment in that same building, right, between two K offices. He's used my book and my phone and just start booking tours. And when we played Yo-Yo A Go-Go, I also met Ellen Stewart from Go Ahead Booking out at New Jersey, who booked like the Afghan Wigs and Seaweed, and who's a bunch of other really cool bands. I met her and started communicating with her, and so that I just ended up booking it. And then, whenever I have trouble, I would call her. And that thing was like, I was on the phone every single day. Yeah. Every day I was on the phone. It was like...
It was a full-time job.
Full-time job. Talking and drinking way too... Jolt Cola, if I don't remember that.
Were you clean? Were you sober by the time you got
Yeah,
into...
I was sober when I got into Fitz. Wow. I've been sober through all that stuff.
They were so lucky.
I know. Well, we were lucky. I was lucky too, and we...
But I mean,
yeah.
You were sort of the band
Yeah,
mom, basically.
I was the
Probably.
band mom for sure.
Yeah.
But like one of the cool stories behind that was I was calling like CBGBs. I was calling and talking to I can't remember her name, Hill's wife. I can't remember. And she would answer the phone, and I let it ring. I was that guy that would let it ring, and then it would go to the voicemail. I wouldn't leave a message. I'd let it ring, and I'd do this for like 4 hours. And she'd finally pick it up, and she'd be like, "What?" And then I'd say, "Yeah, I'm trying to do my spiel," and I wouldn't even get like 3 sentences into it, and she'd be like, "Did you send a tape?" Click, and like kind of stuff. And then Ellen Stewart said, "Call her back and say, my name's Brian Spark. Ellen Stewart told me to call." And so I called back. It took me again, 4 hours to get on the phone. She's like, "What?" I'm like, "This is Brian Spark. Ellen Stewart told me to call you." And she's like, "Oh, what do you need?" And so we got a show at CBGB's on our first tour.
Right.
We got to play with Unsane, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, a really good show. It was a weeknight, but just because of that synchronicity stuff. Yeah.
In New York,
yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's a weeknight.
Does not.
much.
I can tell you that. Yeah.
It's so cool to like put that thing, mark it off your list. I played a show at CBG.
Yeah,
I mean, that's cool, right?
Yeah, that, and Fifth got to play the Marquee Club in London. Oh, yeah, we got to play the Whiskey A Go Go in L.A. There was a few. I don't remember.
You guys do like the Peel sessions? Or
We
something?
did a Peel session
that's cool.
at the BBC. That was really cool. I mean, the list of cool things that we got to do. Like there's a lot of really
It's for a
cool
musician,
stuff.
like hitting those, like me as a photographer, John and I were in Colorado last year. I got to shoot my first show at Red Rocks.
Oh, sweet.
That's a bucket list thing for me, It's just so cool. Like when I was with the Sonics, they got to do Austin City Limits. Like for them, that was like, we could be done now. We're done.
Right.
You know?
That's kind of how I felt with some of those like things
Right.
a little bit. Like I got to do Red Rocks with L7. It was my very first day working for L7. was at Red Rocks as a tech, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it was the worst day, one of the worst days of my life.
Did it rain?
No, just all the equipment. It was my first date, and they had fired their other tech for obvious reasons. Because shit wasn't working, and then shit didn't work.
Before you got there?
I have no idea. All I know is it went really, really bad. And I remember Danita, who I love to death, is a friend. She was like, she said, "You better be better tomorrow," like kind of thing. Like just figure it out. Okay.
All right. Well, we've been going for a while. I think we should end this and do a part 2.
I agree. The stories are just getting better.
All right.
So I'm Kaz.
And I'm Shane. Thanks for watching this first part of the episode, the Olympia music scene with our 3 amazing guests. We'll see you back for part 2.